you guys come out and you have the amazing success, and then obviously working with Ice Cube, and then being on EPMD with Coming At You. As these things were happening, what's the difference between your guys' success as D.O.C, but then the success you see being on an Ice Cube song or being on EPMD song? How did you see the different reactions?
It really wasn't, man. I mean, to be brutally honest, it's like we were the biggest ones in the room at the time, other than trust me, we know Ice Cube is Ice Cube, America's Wanted, but and EPMD coming off of all their thing, but it was just one of those things where we're the new shiny toy. You understand? So by the time we're coming in the room, heads are turning like, yo, those are those dread guys. This stuff. So for us, it wasn't like, it was just expected. Like, yeah, we're hot. We're blazing white hot. We're just doing more hot shit. We didn't see any. Yeah, it was. Yeah, we were on a roll. So it didn't. Our trajectory was just up anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
if anything, it made us cooler with some West Coast fans and like, oh, Ice Cube, it was one of those things, but the arenas didn't get bigger. The yesterday's price didn't change to today's price. It was just still, okay, it's D.O.C doing more hot shit,
Okay. Now with Straight Up Suicide, the second album came out about a year and a half later, also on East West. And on the album, you have the interview where you talk about the other sewage and the people taking your style and stuff. So even at the end of 93, what were you starting to understand about your style and how it was working for you, quote unquote, and against you, quote unquote?
Yeah, it was basically, in hindsight, you wish you had a handbook, or you wish you handled things differently. But at the same time, let me just explain this to people. By the time they heard Dead Serious, those songs were old to us, because it's like you shoot a movie, people see it a year or two later, but to the actor, he's off, he's gone, he's been done that, right? So same thing with the music. And by the time Straight Up Suicide comes around, man, we're not really even focused on rhyming like that anymore. So that's what the people don't really understand. You're hearing Dead Serious, that's super old to us. We've just performed the hell out of it for a year and a half. As true artists, you're always, you know what I mean? You can't ask Derek and Chris to go make the same. They've seen stuff. They're inspired differently. And plus we're having all this outside people biting our shit. So it was a natural evolution for us, but I don't think we were like thumbing our nose up at authorities and shit like that. Like, no, because of course they wanted us to keep making Dead Serious type of music, the same samples, the same iggity. So it was one of those, it was time to rebel. We just sold 2 million records. You can't tell us nothing. You have now a certain amount of leeway. The label's like, all right, well, it's not broke. Let's not fuck this up. So just like T-Pain with the auto-tune, just like Onyx, because we chopped it up a lot with Onyx about this topic, because they came out a year later and then they faced the same thing. Is Onyx going to be yelling all the time on their albums? It's going to be so they were kind of forced to decide what direction they were going to go in. And credit to them, they stayed the course. They stayed with the yelling and they stayed with the ball head. And with us, it was should we be in the sewer? I mean, there was board meetings about this shit. We had to go up to the label and they were like, so you guys, what's the next video going to look like? Should you be in the sewer? Are you going to cut the dreads? Or oh, thank God you're going to keep the dreads. They had a checklist of certain things they wanted us to do. So we kind of, like I said, we're bucking the system. We're like, yo, man, we're not doing that iggity no more. Sylvia was pissed. All the label heads were like, what? And hence Hold It Down. That's why No Diggity. That's a whole nother story. They really were like, I thought you guys were going to go back to the iggity. What do you mean no diggity? We're like, no diggity is a saying we're coming up with. No doubt. It's fine. Oh, the world is not going to understand this. It was a whole mess, that meeting, But, yeah, just outside influence, man. Outside pressure is making you want to, move off your square,
Yeah. Well, sonically, with Straight Up Suicide, one of the things I remember when I was listening to it right when it came out was underground rapper in particular, just starting the album off, the drums were hitting so hard compared to, I think, with Dead Serious, they were a little more in the background somewhat, per se. They were just throughout Straight Up Suicide, just seemed they were much more forceful. Do you remember how or why that ended up happening?
It was a forceful album. That's
Yes, it
why.
is. It's a
Yeah, it
great
was
album.
just, I mean, it's my least favorite album, but I just know it was rushed. I mean, we were literally coming off of Dead Serious. Our whole lives have changed. We've done a 180 now. We've all moved out of our house, our parents' houses. It's a movie. We're living flying high, and out of nowhere, we're getting the news EPMD's breaking up. Out of nowhere, Sylvia calls. She wants the album tomorrow. She wants to start hearing records. So it's everybody out the house, everybody out the pool, everybody, stand straight. Let's focus, get back in the studio. What can we make? And once you start pressing and it's a problem, So I know for Derek and Chris, they're perfectionists. So, and they were hit with we're not sampling this go around because we just paid out the ass. Look at our pub, so we're all looking at certain things. And, I'm glad the public liked it, but it's just one of those. To me, they had to find their own production style. Now they're not sampling. It's a lot. It was one of those. We didn't come together and have a meeting about the album like we did Dead Serious. It's just different things. It's just a different environment. Now we're living in Long Island amongst the trees. We're not in Brooklyn, sharing chicken wings and fried rice, destitute, playing the album. Like, is this the one? Is this it? You know what I'm saying? Right now, so, it's one of those different times, different music, produce different music.
Yeah, you could definitely hear it and feel it.
Yeah.
So then how did you guys, and you personally then, with pressure, with all this change, how and why do you think you sustained to get to hold it down instead of just being like, oh, whatever?
I think because, the label is not going to give up on you right away after you have such initial success. And, we had a massive following, off the first album. Almost it was like a movement. So the label, they wanted to see what can these guys come up with. And there was a meeting of, the minds where it's like, okay, let's compromise. And the label was like, all right, we gave you guys the first two albums, meaning Derek and Chris Solid Scheme was your baby. The third album, now we had to basically relinquish some of it. And that's why guys like Primo were coming in and all these other producers, and to Solid Schemes, to be fair to them, they were getting a little burnt out as well. They're producing, they're remixing, they're doing all type of stuff as they should. And, excuse me, there's competition out there. So you want to see what we sound like on a Primo beat or a Pete Rock or whoever else we used at the time. So, you got to be creative, you just got to go with it. And like I said, the label, they said, listen, man, and we're like, all right, fine. Especially coming off of Straight Up Suicide. It didn't perform as well as Dead Serious, sophomore blues, sophomore jinx. So I was like, all right, I'm just trying to, keep this train rolling. What do y'all need us to do, man?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And also with Straight Up Suicide, the Caught in the Act song, since that's a storytelling song and kind of like not the same topic as Lucy's, of course, but it is a story. So how did you find differently when you guys were working on story rhymes versus braggadocio rhymes? Like, what was the different vibe or energy or mood?
The story songs was were more Chris's idea, because Chris was more a visual guy. Chris would sit us down, and if before we could even get in the booth, he would say, "Let me hear your rhymes," and we'd have to rhyme them to him. And while he's playing the beat in the studio, and he'd stop it and say, "Oh, that line right there." And then he'd write something down like, "Oh, I'm going to have to make the beat change right there. I like what you said. All right, keep going." He was that technical. And then, what was that? What line was that? Is that line 7 or line 8? Line 8, Chris. Okay, I'm going to have something happen at line 8. He was that kind of guy. So there came a time where he proposed to us, why don't we rhyme about, something, make a story. So we just said, all right, and we thought of what we thought of, and Caught in the Act, is that the one where I'm on the train? Or that's Hard Like a Criminal? That's Hard Like a Criminal. Yeah. Well, Caught in the Act never came out, right? Is that the one that never officially came out? Made the album?
I mean, it's on there.
It's
or
on there? Okay.
I have it at least. But
Okay.
But it was just because a lot of the songs weren't like stories per se. It just when you did do them, I always thought they were really interesting, especially because they were somewhat unusually presented.
Yeah. And I wish we did more story songs too. I mean, they're hard to write, first of all, and probably that's why we didn't do a lot of them, but they're pretty hard to write from my perspective anyway, because we wanted to always make them from two perspectives, like a story. Like I said, Chris's visual was visual. So, it's one of those we want, like Dum Dums. It's kind of a story as well. So, but back to Caught in the Act, we wanted to one guy and then the other guy, and then they kind of, okay, so you guys are in conflict or in cahoots, whatever. So that was basically how we would always try and come towards a story song, like Hard Like a Criminal,
Okay. So then with Straight Up Suicide going in to Hold It Down, since you didn't like Straight Up Suicide as much, how did you kind of recalibrate? Because you're going from an album you didn't like as much, and you're doing different producers, and things are always changing so fast in rap. How did you kind of recalibrate yourselves to do, another great job of Hold It Down?
We coming off of Straight Up Suicide. That's why it's like sports. If you won a game and then you just came to another game and you got your ass kicked in that game, the next game, the other team better watch out because you're pissed, So it's kind of like that. We're pissed off of Straight Up Suicide. We're like, nah. And like I said, all these outside things are happening in the industry. We're like, nah, we got to hold it down. So we made sure this album, I was excited to go into this album, to hold it down, because I was not crazy about Straight Up Suicide at all. And I couldn't wait to get it done. I couldn't wait to see, we knew the writing was on the wall. Derek and Chris, they're tapping out, it's, we exhausted that well. So, what do guys like Clark Kent have? And, and we're D.O.C, guys were chomping at the bit to work with us anyway. Like, man, if I could ever work with you guys, well, now's your chance. Let's go, damn it.
Gotcha. And with Real Hip Hop being the biggest song on there, I would say, and one of the biggest of your guys' careers, I love it, but also it's sonically, it's pretty straightforward. There's not as much of the bells and whistles with the samples and the sound effects and all this different stuff. So what do you remember, like when you were making it, or the reaction to the label or even fans, like how did people look at that sonically versus your earlier work that they love?
When you start going into the sonicallys and all that, I just think, it could be dirty as hell, crispy as hell. If it's a good record, it was a good record, So for me, I think it's documented or not. I didn't really like real hip hop. I didn't like it at all. My preference was No Diggity. And Premier did both of those. We had previously gotten off tour you know, because they were cool with EPMD. So we were all on tour together. We got to know them, became fans of their music, of course, and then called up Primo after the tour, like, yo, we're working on a new album and let's link. So when we got with Primo, he was playing us a whole bunch of beats, and School was loving real hip hop. He was like, oh, this beat is it. And I was like, no, it's not. I'm not feeling that. And we just compromised. And I was like, what about this one here, the No Diggity? But it was a little slower. You know, normally we like beats that are 95 BPMs and up. So we did both the records. And ironically, funny enough, if you hear real hip hop, I came up with the hook. I'm the one on the hook to the hip hip, because I was like, that's all I got, School. That's all I got. He was like, I like it. I was like, let's go with it. So I remember we literally got in my car. We were riding around Queens, Brooklyn, and Bronx. We were just stopping random people. They'd be shocked, like, oh shit, it's D.O.C. Yeah. Come over here. We want to play these 2 records. We were literally letting the fans choose. And by the time we finished doing our little taste test listening party, real hip hop was overwhelmingly the fan choice. And it's not like we had a choice, I think, anyway, because at that point, the label, they were, you know, feeling it. And, you know, they kind of know certain things that maybe they were doing their own testers, you know, without us knowing. So, but I just didn't like real hip hop at all. And, you know, I was wrong as well.
That happens sometimes to the best of us.
Yeah.
Be sure to check out The History of Gangster Rap by Soren Baker. He's official.
History of Gangster Rap features exclusive interviews with Ice-T, Snoop Dogg, MC Ren, the D.O.C, and dozens of others. The History of Gangster Rap, a definitive look at how Los Angeles changed rap forever.
In Los Angeles, the streets definitely set the tone of the hip-hop music.
At 19, I got a $50,000 car.
My whole angle always was, I'll be street, but I will always tell you the horrors that go along with this life.
There will be penalties and casualties for just wearing the wrong color in somebody's neighborhood.
And once gangster rap made it from the streets to the TV, the genre exploded.
With Fab 5 on Yo MTV Raps with NWA.
Yo MTV, it just catapulted us from being local heroes to national gangbang rappers.
The History of Gangster Rap discusses it all from 1980 up till today.
It's always gonna be shit happening in the streets. You know what I mean? So it's always gonna be something to talk about.
The History of Gangster Rap in stores now.